Because part of this all is like initiative and sort of engagement in science. But what I will say is this is a very diverse group, a very diverse room that we have here, ladies. It's budding scientists and I think budding social scientists as well, right? So there's very different perspectives on the work that you guys are doing and maybe where some of the interests lie. I've got a couple backup questions, but I'm gonna throw it to the floor. Just if anyone has a question, yeah, go ahead, Chelsea.
I was just wondering how you guys have chose the topic or like specifically what you're going to do for it.
Okay. You guys hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You know what? I'll start here.
So when you're doing a PhD or when you're starting graduate school in general, you can get very lucky and you can find a professor that's interested in exactly what you want to do and that has funding to do that research. So in a perfect world, that would be the perfect match. But sometimes you can have an interest. For example, I have an interest in microbiology and my professor has funding to study certain type of bacteria. So if I'm interested in that, then you go on board. When you're choosing the topic, so usually you have funding to answer 1 or 2 research questions, but then you still have to develop your own PhD. So then you have, for example, I know I have a lake, I know I have volunteers that can sample with me, I have to answer this question, so that's a non-negotiable, and then what else can I do with all of this? So that's the big part of your PhD. So if you're interested in something specific, usually you contact professors that are studying that specific thing. If you're just more interested in a general topic, then yeah, you can just make your own project out of what's already available.
Ask the same question to you, Marie.
Yeah, I think I'm quite agree with what you said. Like, if you're lucky, like to find like your own subject, and you find someone that will pay for that school, but you need like someone who will have like your own subject, and you just go into it and make it kind of your own.
I have a bit of a different approach.
Here we go.
Because I study in a very competitive field. Obviously, like whale scientists are a competitive crowd because there's not a lot of whales and there's not a lot of funding. So for me, it was different. I knew what I wanted to do. I just needed to find a person to do it and be ready to move all across the globe for it. And that's exactly what I did. I followed people and research projects and I moved all over the place. So that's something that you could also be into, but it's a lot more engagement on your life.
Go ahead, sir.
Specifically for you then, you said you went all across the world with professors. Where did that end up?
It took me to, so I'm European at first, I come from France. So it took me to France, it took me kind of all over Europe, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, the US, Canada, and yeah, I wanted very much to go sample my own samples in Mozambique, but they were sent to me. So I used to work on humpback whales as well. So it just takes me whatever, and I just did.
So you enjoy travel?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is for all three of you guys. After your PhD, what type of work opportunities or what type of work you guys can do? What's open to you guys?
That's a really good question. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so you have different options once you finish your PhD. You can go into academia, which is like the university life. So you could like, usually your goal when you go into academia would be to become a prof one day. So this is the most competitive, in my opinion, field because there's not a lot of professorships available anywhere, and it takes only the best of the best. So you really have to fight for it very hard. And usually that goes through postdocs after your PhD. So you do like kind of like mini PhDs after your PhD, and then you try to get a professorship somewhere. Otherwise, you can go into government, which are usually pretty stable positions that pay pretty well, but it's also pretty hard to get into government. Otherwise, you can try to work for an NGO if you do a lot of environment. or then you can go into the industry. And those are private research, and they're just different. They pay a lot more. They're easier to get in, I think. For whale, there's no private stuff, sadly, because we don't harvest whales, which would be bad. But yeah, like for me, for example, I don't have that option. But I don't know about you guys. It's like industry.
Oh yeah, the industry, microbiology, environmental sciences, agriculture is pretty big. But I'm gonna say if you have a master's or a PhD, you can also do whatever you want, because both a master and a PhD, it's not really about the topic that you learn, it's more about the methodology. So you're learning how to learn, you're learning how to solve problems, and I think employers really value that. They know that when you're faced with a question, when you're faced with an issue, that you will figure out how to answer it and then do it, and do it successfully. That's when you get your diploma. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can even change fields completely. You can start in a certain type of science and then go into another one. So it's really flexible. It's really flexible. But only go to grad school if you really want to, because it's not easy. It's not easy at all. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
I'm going to throw a question at the three of you. And again, thinking about how we have a mixed group here. So you all have sort of your little specialty, your particular project that you're working on, but you're part of a much larger field. So what are some of the prevailing issues you see in the future of your field, and where do you see the need for maybe new scientists or new social science scientists to help contribute to that field, or to help solve those problems?
I think Zineb has a
Good niche there, I will
no,
say.
but like with citizen science, like it's something that's I think taking off in science. It's really interesting, and you can also do social science with citizen science. So I'm kind of rolling the ball.
No, I agree. I think I mean, I've never studied sociology, so I'm not sure what you guys are doing, but I do think that that's a good way to work together. I think a lot of fields in general are going into more interdisciplinary research in general. So I think, even if you study sociology and then you're interested in sciences, you can go from one field to the next. For example, I studied in both my undergrad and my master's, I was in agriculture, and I never did any microbiology a little bit of environmental sciences, but I was able to go from one to the next. So I'm a new microbiologist. I'm not going to be able to tell you what's going on in my field, but there's always an opportunity to change it up.
Yeah. If I can add, in terms of the citizen science, there's a lot of people actually researching how citizen science is going on, so how to approach the people that you're working with. Some communities might be a bit more, maybe less wanting to get involved. So there's a lot of stuff also going on there. If you're part of a community that a researcher is trying to approach, then you can maybe like the person that is in between. So
Yeah, so even before choosing to do citizen science, we were looking at research, for example, that was comparing the quality of data of samples collected by scientists versus collected by just volunteers, and we were able to see that, well, there's no difference, as long as you train them, a sample is a sample, so they can do it, especially if it's just a water sample, or probably not a killer whale sample, but
we do have
do?
citizen scientists in Iceland, and they come with us and they help with observation. So they record everything that's going on when we follow the whales, their reaction to sampling, how the groups interact with each other. It's very easy to train people on, and so they come in the boat and they help us.
Are there any questions online, Andrew? I haven't asked you.
We had a question online about red tide and whether or not that's a similar phenomena.
So I focus on algal blooms. So first, algal blooms, when a lake is green, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's cyanobacteria. And then it could be other types of algae, or like eukaryotes, unicellular eukaryotes such as euglena. And then for red tide, it can also be cyanobacteria. Usually it's more in the ocean, and it's mainly, so cyanobacteria have different pigments, giving them their color, so it can be green, can be more blue, could be brown, could be red. But the main one that I'm studying is mostly the green-looking algal blooms because they're the important ones or the most prevalent ones here in our lakes in Quebec.
Any other questions from the floor, guys? Don't be shy. We're just talking. Yeah, go ahead.
You said you traveled a lot, but was that also part of the budget of the research, or was that like you had to pay for all the trips?
That's a good question. Both. So it started, I think the first country I did for research just as a volunteer was to go to Italy, which is close to France, by the way. It's not that far when you're in Europe. But it was like everybody was having a cool summer, and I just like worked all summer for free as a volunteer. It was really cool because I was with whales and dolphins, but it was still like unpaid labor, and so I did a lot of those. So I would save money all year to basically just go work for free in the summer. But that's how I gained the skills, and that's how I gained the contacts. And then I was able to get positions, so in my master's and then in my PhD. And then once you're in a lab that has a lot of funding, then you can get paid to well, you don't get paid more, but your travel is reimbursed. So then I went to like Japan and a bunch of like different areas to present at conferences. I'm going to Dublin in 10 days to present my results at another international conference. So you do a lot of this, and then it's a lot of like trying to find money. As a student, there are a lot of programs that offer internship money or that help you pay for your traveling if you're going to volunteer somewhere. So it's a lot of looking and Googling every possible opportunity and applying to everything you can. And then something's gonna happen, and then you can transfer those skills to something else in the future. Once you have the skills, you can just use them for grad school or for a job or something else. So it's a lot of sacrifices at first, but then it's not.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
A lot of these students are, over the next few years, going to do their first research opportunities, get in front to lead their first poster presentation or first oral presentations. Would you, I'm not going to put any one person on the spot, but if any of the three of you or all three of you can share what it was like the first time you had to stand up and present something that you had ownership of, that you had done, but knowing that there's others in the audience that may have knowledge there. How was that for you?
It's terrifying the first time, of course. Like, especially if you go to a conference, you present to your peers. Oh my goodness. I think my first big conference was in Japan. And I was just like presenting some of my work in Iceland. So like really not the same place at all. And it was like a room filled with like maybe 100 people that were all very, very much smarter than me. And I had to present my results. And I was like, honestly, I think I like had a minor panic attack before it. And like now it's easier because I've done it many times over the years, but the first time it's always terrifying. So if you're terrified of presenting your group projects, it gets better. But it is scary at first.
So I actually want to ask a follow-up because of the way you answered that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now that you've also been one of the people in the seats listening to others do their first presentation, do you still feel like that room of 100 were all smarter than you?
Everybody has some contribution. Like everybody is smarter than me in some place. Like,
But
yeah.
you're also, I mean, you have your knowledge in this area that exceeds almost anything else.
Absolutely, but then Zineb, I don't know anything about her project. Like she's way smarter than me on anything cyanobacteria. So it's yeah.
Just to add to that, no one's out to get you. No one's there to judge you. You're just there to present your research. People are listening to you some people will be interested, some people won't be interested. That's just the way it is. But don't think too much about yourself. Think about, okay, this is an opportunity for me to share something that I know, and it might spark interest in someone else. It might not. If you're going to a conference, if you're a new student, professors will know more than you because they've been learning for like decades.
Yeah.
And that's normal. You're not supposed to know more than them. Of course, they expect you to know enough for that stage in your career, academic career, but yeah, no one's out there to judge you. You'll get used to it. It's terrifying at first, but as time goes by, honestly, it's just like another routine thing that you have to do.
If I can add anything, usually the smartest, most incredible profs are the most humble and approachable people. I've had like interactions with people that were like gods in my field, and I saw them, I was like, hi. And like they were just like the sweetest people. So it's like once you rip out the band-aid, it's good.
I'm gonna ask I'll ask this one to you, Marie. Did you know this was what you always wanted to do? Like, did you just like know at this age, at 17, these are the courses I'm gonna take, this is where I'm gonna go, this is where I'm gonna go to my university? Or was it more of a windy road?
Like I always knew I wanted to do something about ecology because it was really what was interesting me. But like I wasn't sure like I was doing like marine biology or like on fish or genomics, and I didn't know that I wanted to go to McGill. Like it was more like opportunity that came like when I was doing like my undergraduate in France, I used to like terrestrial species. And I have like a lot of opportunity to go to marine field trip and everything. And so I choose that, oh, okay, it's good. So I start to like gaining experience in that. And every time it was just like opportunities and I just go into it. And right now.
I'll throw the same question to you, Sineb. You know, was it any experience in particular that's maybe you were on a trajectory and then just changed direction? You sort of implied that now you find yourself in microbiology. It's not what you wanted to do. You're doing agriculture. So, what got you on this new path?
So I heard you earlier in the hallway when you guys were talking about med school and everyone wants to go to med school. I wanted to go to med school as well. And then I remember when I was in undergrad, I had to take an elective and everyone was saying that, okay, this elective is quite easy and go do it. And it was a soil science class. And I loved it so much. And that changed all my plans. I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with humans or be a doctor anymore. I want to see what's in the soil. And he sold it so well. It was like, the soil is full of microorganisms and we only know a fraction of them. And it was just so interesting. It's an exciting new field. So I think it has to do with what you're exposed to. The professor, I think a passionate professor can make the whole difference. You can be so sure that this is what you want to study, and then you have an amazing professor, and that can change your trajectory completely. But yeah, that's how I got into the field initially. And then from switching from agriculture to microbiology, so I did take a break between my master's and my PhD. I worked for a little bit, and we were organizing a symposium on soil biodiversity. And just reading the content, I was like, I think I want to work with microbes now. You know, I've done the plants, I've done the soil. Now I want to deal with the microbes. So that's how I switched to microbiology.
Was the whale necklace always like has that been there since you were 5 years old, or?
Yeah, you guessed it. Yeah, always killer whales, always. And like, it's gonna sound so freaking cliche, but I was 5. I was gonna be like, I'm gonna save the killer whales, and I come from the Alps, by the way, so there's no ocean by me. So I was just like, everybody in my school was like, this crazy girl. She's all about whales. She's creepy. But I was just like, that's just what I'm gonna do. And I think every decision I've ever made was just with that goal in mind, and it keeps being the case, and it's gonna keep being the case for a long time until I get tired of it, which I don't think it's gonna happen.
Are we doing enough time?
Contrasted story.
It's true.
When did you want to end? Around 2 o'clock. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Ethan. Ethan's got a question.
One more, I guess for Anaïs, because that's what she was saying. So, we have sort of a history of science and activism don't necessarily mix things very well in terms of its ability to persuade, in particular. That scientific fact and the ability of the scientists to persuade people against their own interests to act on those facts are not necessarily, they don't necessarily go very well together. Are you interested in going outside of the science toward the political arena to try to persuade people that what you're doing should be acted upon, or are you sort of more interested in just sticking to the, here's the research, do what you want with this side?
So I asked myself the same question about 4 years ago when I started my PhD. I was like, because I want to go into academia, and I just said that was the most competitive field, in my opinion, at least in my field. And I was like, okay, well, doing a PhD is not enough. What else do I do next to my PhD so I stand out the most? And I was like, I can choose activism, I could choose science communication, I could choose any like citizen science, and I chose science communication. And so I've been communicating with the public for about 3.5 years now, trying to engage people on these stories and try to share with them the importance of whale research. But I did not go into the political side because of what you said, because there is such, I think, a separation that's currently going on between science and politics. And I didn't feel like I was legitimate to, like, I didn't feel like I had enough baggage to, like, get into the politics of it. And I still don't think I do. I don't think my skills are there just yet. So we will see in the future. But for now, I think engaging with the public and trying to share our love and knowledge for whales is good enough for now. But maybe in the future. Thanks.
Okay, so maybe I'll end with one last question. So a lot of what you're doing here is community outreach. Why is that important to you? Why get involved in community outreach and talking to people here about what it is you do? Why is that important to you? Maybe I asked the wrong question.
I think, well, we're all, I think, funded by public research. My main motivation is I'm going to give back to the public what the public gave me. The public gave me funds to do my research. I think the least I can do is try to share what I found in an accessible way. I think that the public who leads, everybody leads their own lives. They don't have to be scientists to understand my research. I think that's my my motivation, and I really want to share it with them, what they give me back. And I think inspire people like you guys who maybe want to become scientists and like show you that we're all, I think, pretty regular people, and we are all scientists. And maybe if you want to do science, then we've inspired you maybe to try it. And science is cool. And yeah.
Anything to add?
I think that was pretty good.
Science is cool. Yeah, I think science is cool.
All right.